Hey, come see us live. We're doing our Rumble Time show September 27th in Los Angeles. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, and we'll be in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Speaking of Ian Carroll, is this evidence that Trump's assassin was a CIA asset? It's still early. Don't jump to any conclusions.
Too late. I did. Too late. I assume guilty until proven innocent.
So Curtis jumping. I'm going to hold.
Why would I hesitate to jump to that conclusion? Is everyone stupid? Why would you think it's anything but that unless you don't know anything? Well, it's what it is.
The only thing
they do it a lot.
The only thing is they didn't kill him. They don't have
to. He's a Fruit Loop. You don't have to kill him. It's great that the guy the 74-year-old man that had no history of anything that shot that president of Slovakia. That's another one of those. Oh. They made a bunch of them. They get Transformation of America by Kathy O'Brien. I thought she was a crazy lady until I found out she testified before Congress and they classified it. So that means guilty. So yeah, I'm jumping on it. I'm jumping to conclusions. But I'm not yelling at Ian. That guy does great work. He does great work.
So here's what Ian actually found out.
So the new Trump assassin just dropped and there's some spicy details already. Ryan Routh, very strange guy who's lived a very strange life. And this time, the internet was wise and archived all of his socials as much as possible before the FBI took it all down. So here's some basics on what we know about him and one really interesting rabbit hole about who he might be. Right off the bat, though, it's super early. This is all speculative. Take your time, pump the brakes. We're just digging through dirty laundry. We don't know what sticks yet. But this guy is a private American citizen who traveled to Ukraine on his own dime, to help recruit civilian soldiers to fight for Ukraine and Afghan special forces. He was recruiting on his Facebook page. Here's an archive of all of his tweets that look pretty damn automated to me. They pretty much all look like this. In a past life in Hawaii, he apparently ran this company that made a single tiny home and a single Facebook page and never did anything else with it. Super weird. But I grabbed everyone that he followed on Twitter before they deleted it. He only followed 60. And right down at the bottom of that list, which I think indicates his first follow, is this girl named Sue Kim, who is ex-CIA, along with some other very interesting things. Now, again,
she actually, it turns out that was his second follow. It wasn't his first follow. His second follow was that woman who's ex-CIA. Okay.
Reminder, this is just speculation, digging through Twitter dirt. Maybe this chick is just a wonderful, patriotic person that's helping America. Who knows? But her account is private, meaning why does he follow her? I've been digging around and one of my followers said that they found her in the people that follow him back. I have not been able to confirm that for myself because they took the account down. If you've got a video of the 1.2 thousand followers that followed him, that would be great to know. He says that she was at the bottom of his followed list, meaning that she followed him right when he made the account. That would make sense, seeing as she's at the bottom of his following list of who he follows too. I mean, every asset needs a handler. And when you go through some of these other affiliations here, you get what is essentially the CIA training grounds at Johns Hopkins University. It explores the relationship between politics and the many kinds of military power, from the use of terror by small non-state groups to the threatened use of nuclear weapons. Its director is John McLaughlin, who is literally an ex-acting director of the CIA and ex-deputy director of the CIA, 3-decade career at the CIA. David is third on the list of people at the top of this institution at the university. 30-year career in Army Special Forces, various special operations, invading various countries, as well as Operation Enduring Freedom. You get the idea. Anyways, Rand Corporation. That's a military industrial complex think tank, kind of like the Atlantic Council. And LMI.org. Yeah, that's like a military industrial complex education and training program as well. Preliminary findings on the internet when you search our homeboy, the shooter, show his arrest record, including in 2002, possession of weapons of mass destruction.
What?
Class F felony?
Yeah. Still
along with 3 other blocks of things like possession of handguns or concealed weapons and driver's license stuff. And yeah, that sounds like some operative shit.
Yeah, don't jump to conclusions.
But again, we don't know any of this yet. We're just digging through dirty laundry on the internet. It's hard to tell what's real. But this is a photo of the weapon he used and the setup he had. People are speculating it looks an awful lot like, Russian-Ukrainian class of rifle. He's doing these weird recruitment ops in Ukraine for civilians. Well, he's like posting on his Facebook all the time to like no followers about how he's recruiting hundreds of civilians to fight for Ukraine. Posting for like Afghan special forces to contact him so they can come fight in Ukraine. But he's like just a random citizen from Hawaii. And one of the 60 people he follows is this CIA gal that allegedly follows him back. That looks an awful lot like a handler or a contact. His account looks an awful lot like a bot or an MK Ultra or a Pato. Who knows what the hell this is? His criminal record looks an awful lot like what you might expect a kind of guy in this kind of line of work to leave behind. And then there's the weird video evidence getting turned up.
Officials in Kiev simply aren't interested in recruiting them.
Ukraine is reluctant to be cooperative.
That's Ryan Routh, a U.S. citizen who set up the International Volunteer Center in Ukraine to help connect foreigners to Ukrainian military units.
Now I'm talking to over 100 soldiers every day, and pretty much everybody, all of my contacts in Ukraine, they were adamant and pretty much yelled at me every time that I suggested that we bring in Afghans.
The Ukrainian government didn't respond to our request for comment. But a source close to the officials in Kiev told Semaphore that their top concern is the question of loyalty in the thick fog of war.
The biggest thing is spies. They're afraid that anybody and everybody is a Russian spy.
Shout out to some bitch I know on X, who currently has one of the best archives of all of his socials and accounts. There's a lot of other people doing good work right now. And again, I just want to clarify. I'm not trying to pretend like I've solved the case or like we know what's going on. Yeah. We just have learned by now that the FBI is going to just cover everything up. And so it's up to us to try to dig everything out before they do. So that's what we're doing. And yes, it's ridiculous that that is even a set of sentences we have to say in America in 2024 when someone tries to kill the former and future president of the United States of America. And I mean, I can only imagine who might be backing up these operations to try to shoot him and who might be providing the intel and the access and the cover-ups, etc. So last thing I'll say, Ryan Routh, he's currently in custody. He was driving away in an SUV. They caught him. He's alive for now. And I just want to remind us all, Ryan Routh did not kill himself. If cameras malfunction outside of his cell, if he has a weird slipping accident, whatever happens, yeah, you know the story. 50 more days. My money's on at least one more attempt before we get there. So stay frosty, because the war machine desperately needs the wars to escalate, and they're not down with the MAGA Maha folks shutting down the wars. And they are ready to kill people, ready to assassinate, allegedly, apparently, theoretically, just jokingly, in order to perpetuate those wars.
So apparently them being involved in, RFK says the CIA was involved in his father and his uncle's.
Yeah, they were. Of course they were. Why would it even be in doubt?
Why
would we have to take baby steps for a thing? I wonder if the mafia did it. I wonder if Jeffrey Dahmer ate some people. Is everybody stupid on purpose? Obviously, this is what it is. Now, we don't know who sent him because that technology that they developed that they've never stopped working on and they mass rolled out is proprietary. That means there's a lot of actors that have their own versions of it. So he could be working for FBI, CIA, NSA, NRO. There's like all these organizations. It could be a private contract. He could have been a slave sold to a corporation that is using that programming on him. There's many possibilities. However, I don't have any doubt that that guy went through the program. I want to know who his parents are. I want to know his family history. That'll tell me a lot. The last guy, his dad was a behavioral modification therapist or something. Guilty. His dad was the handler. That's what that means. You should have either Kathy O'Brien on or J.R. Sweet or any of these people that were in the program in the 90s, because they got very interesting things to tell, and it directly ties into this, because I don't think they're just worried about wars ending. I don't think Trump's against war, by the way. I think what they're worried about is not JFK, not UFOs coming out, but this slave program that they had for 30 years that Reagan was involved in, and Cheney and George Bush Sr. and all those pricks that are now one unit. Cheney endorses Kamala. That should tell you a lot.
Okay. There is nothing I wouldn't believe. Put it that way. There's nothing that is too far fetched.
Except they're innocent. Except that they're innocent.
You know, when you're
That's
supposed to watch Building 7 fall into its own a steel building fall into its own footprint. The third one of that day, because a plane hit another building. Not that one, because a plane hit another building, and there was some kind of office furniture fire that made a steel building fall to its own footprint. We had the chief engineer from the University of Alaska Fairbanks on our show to say that is not what happened, that did not be caused because a plane hit another building. And that's so if they can make you, and whatever you can't question, that's when you know you're onto something. You weren't allowed to question the COVID narrative about where the virus came from. You weren't allowed to question herd immunity, natural immunity, masks. You weren't allowed to question the vaccine, whether it stopped transmission or contraction. You weren't allowed to ask for the vaccine trial data they wanted to keep hidden for 75 years. You weren't allowed.
It's not incompetence, Jimmy. It's malice. It is not incompetence. It is malice.
That's right.
It's very obvious.
You weren't
allowed. Obvious to everyone.
You're not allowed to ask about 9/11. You're not allowed to ask about Seth Rich. Where was he for 4 hours after he left the bar and he got? Nobody knows. You weren't allowed to ask about his laptop, which now the FBI isn't going to release for 65 years. They're not going to release. They lied about his laptop. They said they didn't have it. They didn't know. Then they said they had it, but they couldn't get the data. Then they said they got the data, then they just said, hey, we're not going to release it, even though a federal judge ordered them to release it twice. They're still not releasing it.
No, national security, Jimmy. It's too
So
important.
if you're not allowed to ask questions, as soon as you're not allowed to ask questions, that's when you know there's something afoot, some what they call fuckery. So, hey, the mainstream media is unreliable. That's why you watch this show. It's dishonest. That's why you watch this show. How can you trust them when they're never, ever told the truth about Russiagate, Julian Assange, Ukraine, Syria? Well, that's where our sponsor, Ground News, comes in. Ground News is an app and a website that gathers related articles from around the world in one place so you can compare the kind of coverage like the kind of that we do on this show. That's kind of like what we do on this show. We show you how, look at how they're covering it, and then we debunk it for you. Well, Ground News is very similar. Let's take a closer look at some of Ground News' coverage on President Trump's attempted assassination. Ground News gives me instant access to more than 700 articles reporting on it all over the world with context on each publication's political bias. Factuality based on how subjective or objective their language is, and even who is funding those people. So comparing the coverage is absolutely fascinating to me. Left-leaning USA Today and ABC News downplayed the shooting by writing that Trump was removed from the stage after loud noises startled him and rang out in the crowd. I wouldn't say USA is left-leaning. I'd say they're establishment-leaning. Mm-hmm. The Irish Times went as far as victim blaming, adding that the assassination attempt might even help him win the White House. Right-leaning outlets like the Daily Signal and the New York Post were really quick to call out liberal media's biased coverage, reporting that their bias was on full display. Unfortunately, moments like these can fuel the fires of misinformation, and very inaccurate narratives can spread like wildfire. The only way to combat this is to stay informed through really diverse news sources, something Ground News simplifies and excels at. I mean, they even created a blind spot feed to expose what the other side of the political spectrum isn't reporting on, freeing readers of any hidden agendas and political spins. With media bias just running crazy like it is, I can't recommend subscribing to Ground News enough to stay fully informed on topics with explosive headlines. So go to Ground News, go to ground.news/JD with my link in the description to get 40% off their Vantage subscription, which will give you unlimited access to all their analysis and features. See through mainstream media narratives at Ground News. Let me give it to you again. Ground.news/JD. Subscribe this month through my link for 40% off unlimited access to Ground News. My link right there. Go there. You get 40% off. It's a great news site. Hey, come see us live. We're doing our Rumble Time show September 27th in Los Angeles. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, and we'll be in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.